Welcome to the Funeral Program Site podcast.
It's good to be here.
Yeah.
Usually when we sit down for these deep dives, we're unpacking something a bit removed from our daily emotional lives, tech trends, history, maybe a bit of abstract science.
Yeah.
But today feels different. Today, we're walking into a room that almost everyone will eventually have to walk into, but very few of us are actually prepared for.
That is the perfect way to frame it. We aren't just talking about an object, we are talking about an experience. We are talking about the box,
The box.
the burial container. And I think for a lot of people, myself included, this is one of those purchases that feels incredibly heavy. Literally, yes, but metaphorically even more so.
Mhm.
It is arguably one of the most significant financial decisions a family makes, and it usually happens during the absolute worst week of their lives.
It really is a unique intersection of commerce and tragedy.
Hmm.
And the sources we have today, ranging from industry guides to psychological studies on grief spending and FTC regulations, they all point to one singular problem.
Confusion.
Yeah, a massive gap between what the industry knows and what the grieving family knows.
And that gap is where the stress lives. When you don't know the rules of the game and you're grieving, you feel vulnerable. So our mission today is to demystify this.
Right.
We want to take the fear out of the selection room. We're going to break down the difference between a casket and a coffin because apparently they aren't the same thing. We're going to look at the money, the materials, and the consumer rights you have but probably don't know about.
Exactly. We want to provide a map for a territory that most people hope they never have to visit. And we need to start with the core confusion, the vocabulary itself.
Yeah, the words.
If you watch a movie or read a vampire novel or, look at Halloween decorations, you hear the word coffin.
Right, Dracula's coffin.
But if you walk into a funeral home in Ohio or Texas or pretty much anywhere in the United States, you hear the word casket.
I definitely use them interchangeably, or I did until I read these notes. I always assumed casket was just a kind of a polite way of saying coffin.
You did?
Yeah, like we were trying to soften the blow of what we were actually doing.
You are actually spot on with the softening the blow part, which we will get to in a moment. But functionally, the industry treats them as two very distinct objects.
Huh.
And the experts highlight that families don't get this wrong because they aren't smart. They get it wrong because you are never taught the difference.
No.
Not until you are sitting in that selection room, usually with tears in your eyes.
And that is the worst possible time to be learning vocabulary. Your brain is in a fog. You're just trying to survive the hour.
Precisely. And this brings us to the psychology of the purchase. We have a fascinating source here that discusses a concept called death-related status consumption.
That sounds intense. Status consumption usually makes me think of buying a luxury car or a designer watch to show the neighbors how well you're doing.
It is the same psychological mechanism, but applied to a funeral, which makes it much more complex. The research suggests that families often feel an immense unspoken pressure to spend money as a demonstration of love.
So it's like, the more I spend, the more I loved them.
That's the logic.
Yeah.
It's flawed, but very human. The thinking is, if I buy the oak casket with the velvet interior for $5,000, I loved my dad more than if I bought the pine box for $1,000.
Oh, that hits hard. I can see that. You're vulnerable, you're grieving, and you feel like, well, Dad deserves the best, right? You don't want to be the person who cheaped out on the final tribute.
Exactly. The sources call this over-purchasing, to cope with grief or fear. You are trying to regain some control in a situation, a death where you have absolutely no control.
I see.
Spending money feels like action. It feels like care. But before we go any further into the nuts and bolts, I want to issue a disclaimer that echoes through all our source material today.
Yeah, let's unpack that. I think this is crucial for anyone listening.
There is no right or wrong choice here. The dignity of a funeral doesn't come from the price tag on the wood or the gauge of the metal.
That's so important.
Whether it is a simple pine box or a bronze masterpiece, the dignity comes from the ritual, the memory, and the people gathered there. We are analyzing the mechanics of the industry so you can make an informed choice, not judging how people choose to say goodbye.
I love that. It takes the judgment out of it. It's about fit, not price. Okay, so let's get into the physical reality of these things. You mentioned they are geometrically different. If I am standing in a showroom looking at a casket and a coffin side by side, what am I actually seeing?
Let's start with the American standard, the casket. If you are in the United States, this is almost certainly what you are seeing.
Okay.
A casket is rectangular. It has four sides. It looks like a bed.
Right. It's boxy. It doesn't look like a person fits in there necessarily. It just looks like a piece of furniture,
Yeah.
a chest or something.
It is boxy, but crucially, it usually has a hinged lid, and often that lid is split. You will hear the term half couch in the industry.
Half couch. That's an interesting term. Where does that come from?
It comes from an older terminology where the casket was essentially a viewing bed or a couch. Half couch means the lid is cut in two, so during a viewing, only the head end opens to reveal the upper body. The legs remain covered.
Ah. Oh,
A full couch means the whole lid opens as one piece. A casket also has rails or bars running along the long sides for the pallbearers to hold.
okay. So casket equals rectangle. What about the coffin?
The coffin is the old world tradition. Think about the shape of a vampire's bed in a classic horror movie.
Hi. Oh.
It has 6 sides. It is hexagonal.
Yeah, it's wide at the shoulders and then tapers in at the feet and the head.
Exactly. It is anthropomorphic.
Right.
It's shaped like a human body. And the lid usually isn't hinged in the same complex way. It is often fully removable.
So you just lift it off.
You just lift it off. And the handles aren't those long rails. They're usually specific fixtures attached to the side, which the industry calls coffin furniture.
Coffin furniture. That is a term I didn't expect to learn today. But why the difference? Why did we in the US go for the rectangle while the UK and Europe largely stuck with the 6-sided shape?
This is where that softening the blow theory you mentioned comes back. The etymology is fascinating. The word casket originally meant a jewelry box, a container for something precious.
Wow. So we literally started calling them jewelry boxes to make it feel less like a dead body.
Essentially, yes. In the mid-19th century in America, particularly around the Civil War and the years following, there was a huge cultural shift to make death feel less stark, less gruesome.
That makes sense.
The 6-sided coffin looks like a body. It reminds you immediately of mortality. It's an outline of the person. The rectangular casket looks like a bed or a chest. It is designed to look protective and comforting.
So the UK kept the traditional understated coffin.
Right, while Americans moved toward the idea of presentation. The source suggests this was a very conscious marketing and design choice by the burgeoning American funeral industry.
That makes so much sense. We Americanized it by making it look more like furniture and less like a silhouette of a corpse. It's all about the visual branding of death.
He really is.
But practically speaking, if I'm in the US and I want that cool, old-school coffin look, maybe my grandfather was from Ireland and I want to honor that, can I get one?
You can, but it is harder. Most funeral homes in the U.S. stock caskets as inventory. A true coffin is often a special order.
So I'd have to plan ahead.
You probably have to plan ahead. And here is a bit of irony. Because coffins are tapered, they actually use less wood. Theoretically, they should be cheaper to manufacture than a big rectangular box.
But I'm guessing they aren't cheaper for the customer.
Rarely. Because in the U.S., they're a niche specialty item. You lose the economy of scale. You might end up paying a premium for the import or the custom build.
So it's a classic case of supply and demand overriding the cost of materials.
It follows us everywhere, even to the grave.
Okay, let's talk about that price tag, because this is the part that makes people sweat. We talked about status consumption, but what are the actual numbers we are dealing with?
According to the FTC and our 2025 pricing data, the average casket is just over $2,000. But that average hides a massive range.
Just an average, yeah.
You can find options for under $1,000, around $995, and you can find copper or bronze caskets for $10,000 or more.
That is a huge spread. It is like buying a car. You can get the reliable used sedan or you can get the luxury sports car.
It is the single most expensive item in a traditional funeral. And to understand why, you have to look at the materials. Let's break it down into the 2 main categories that families will see: wood and metal.
Okay, let's start with wood. I imagine this is like furniture shopping.
Very similar. At the lower end, you have veneers and composite woods. This is essentially engineered wood with a nice-looking layer on top.
Like an IKEA bookshelf kind of thing.
Exactly. It looks like oak or cherry, but it is not solid. It's functional, looks decent, but not an heirloom.
And then the solid stuff is where the price jumps.
Right. You move up to hardwoods like oak, maple, or birch. These are very sturdy, very traditional. And then at the top tier, the luxury woods, you have mahogany, walnut, and cherry.
Okay.
Now, this is important. The price difference here isn't really about how well the box works. They all hold the body just fine. It is driven by the rarity of the wood and the craftsmanship.
Sounds like the finish.
Hand-rubbed finishes, rounded corners, intricate carvings, that sort of thing. So if you are buying mahogany, you are paying for the fact that mahogany is an expensive tree, not because it protects the person better.
So a mahogany casket doesn't last longer in the ground than a pine one, really.
Not in any meaningful way. You're paying for the beauty of the grain and the sort of the weight of the wood during the service.
Okay, that makes sense. Now, metal is a different beast, and this is where people get really confused because of the gauge system. I read the notes on this and had to read it twice.
You and everyone else. It is a classic trap. You see numbers like 16, 18, and 20. And in our normal lives, we usually think a higher number means more or better.
Right, like 20 is bigger than 16, so 20 must be the better, stronger metal, right?
But in metal thickness, it is counterintuitive. Think of it like a fraction. The gauge refers to how many sheets of metal it takes to make an inch.
Okay.
So 20 gauge means it takes 20 sheets to make an inch. They have to be pretty thin sheets to stack 20 of them in an inch.
Ah.
But 16 gauge means it only takes 16 sheets to make an inch. So those sheets must be thicker.
I see. So a lower number equals thicker, heavier metal.
Correct. 20 gauge is the economy steel. It is lighter, often painted. It's what you might find on the body of a standard car. 18 gauge is the mid-range standard. And 16 gauge is heavy duty. It feels solid. It doesn't flex if you push on it.
And then entirely separate from steel, you have copper and bronze.
Yes. Those are the precious or semi-precious objects.
And those are the expensive ones, the
Yeah.
$10,000 ones.
Yes, significantly so. And the reason is simple chemistry. Steel, even thick 16-gauge steel, is made of iron. It will eventually rust.
Right.
Copper and bronze are naturally rust-resistant. They oxidize, sure, getting that green patina, but they don't disintegrate in the same way. They're considered non-rusting.
But here is where we get to the most controversial part of the casket industry, the seal.
The seal. This is the big one.
I have heard this term, protective caskets, gasketed caskets. It sounds like something a salesperson would push. Don't you want to protect your mother?
It is a major selling point.
Yeah.
A gasketed casket has a rubber seal, like a refrigerator door, along the lid. When they crank it shut with a key at the end of the casket, it compresses the rubber and seals the unit tight.
And the marketing implies that this protects the loved one from the elements, water, soil, insects.
That's the implication.
And does it?
Technically, yes, it keeps elements out for a time and keeps the rain out. But, and this is a huge but that the FTC mandates we mentioned, it does not stop decomposition.
Whoa. Okay. I think a lot of people assume sealed means preserved, like a time capsule.
That is the common misconception. But the Federal Trade Commission explicitly warns consumers about this. There's a rule that funeral providers cannot claim a casket will preserve a body forever.
Why not?
Because our bodies contain bacteria. Decomposition happens from the inside out just as much as the outside in. In fact, some scientists argue that a sealed environment, which traps moisture and removes oxygen, promotes anaerobic bacteria.
And what does that mean?
It means it promotes a different kind of decomposition that isn't necessarily better. It's just different. The body is not preserved.
So you are paying for a rubber seal that keeps the rain out, but the result for the body is largely the same.
In the long run, yes. Nature wins eventually. But that peace of mind is a powerful product. Many families pay hundreds or thousands more for that seal because the idea of protection feels like an act of care. They can't stand the thought of dirt touching the satin.
That is wild. It really is preying on that fear of, well, decay. It's selling a momentary feeling of security against an inevitable natural process.
It is. And we should also mention the interior. You have different fabrics like crepe, which is more common, and velvet, which is plusher and more expensive.
So that's just an aesthetic choice.
Purely aesthetic. And then there's the adjustable bed.
Wait, adjustable bed? Like a sleep number?
Yeah. Little bit. There is a mechanism inside most quality caskets that allows the funeral director to insert a crank and tilt the mattress up or down.
Why?
This is purely for the viewing. It allows them to position the body so they look restful and natural for the people standing next to the casket. If the body is too deep, they look sunken. If they're too high, it looks odd. The adjustable bed allows for that perfect presentation.
So again, we are paying for the presentation aspect. It has nothing to do with burial.
Nothing at all. Once the lid is closed for burial, that feature serves no function.
So much of this is for the living. It's for the service.
Almost all of it. And that isn't a bad thing if the viewing is important to you. If that last look helps your grief, if seeing them look peaceful helps you say goodbye, then the velvet and the adjustable bed are worth every penny. But you need to know why you are buying it.
Right. It is about being an informed consumer, even when you were sad. Now let's pivot to the cultural side of this, because we aren't just biological machines, we are symbolic creatures. How do different cultures view these materials?
It varies wildly, and it often dictates the spending. In general, wood is seen as warm. It symbolizes a return to the earth. It is organic. It feels like a library or a home.
Yeah, makes sense.
Metal is seen as strong, protective, enduring. It is clinical in a way, but also it feels secure, like a safe or a vault.
I know color plays a big role too.
Definitely. White is almost universally associated with purity and innocence in the West, often used for children. Black, blue, silver, these are dignity colors. They feel serious, respectful. But let's look at the Jewish tradition, because it offers a really stark contrast to the American protection mindset we just discussed.
Yes, the pine box tradition.
In traditional Jewish burials, the requirement is for a simple, unadorned wooden casket. Often it cannot have any metal parts at all, no nails. They use wooden pegs and glue.
No metal handles, no rails.
No. Sometimes you use rope handles or just a simple ledge for carrying. And often holes are actually drilled in the bottom of the casket.
Holes, so it's intentionally the opposite of the sealed casket.
Exactly. The theology is dust to dust. The goal is not to preserve the body or protect it from the earth. The goal is to facilitate the return to the earth as quickly and naturally as possible.
Wow.
It implies that the soul has moved on and the vessel is returning to nature. It also symbolizes equality. Everyone, rich or poor, gets the same simple pine box.
That is the complete opposite of the sealed bronze casket concept. It really shows how your worldview changes what you buy.
It does. If your value is protection, you buy metal. If your value is return to nature, you buy pine or wicker.
Speaking of wicker, let's talk about the green shift. We are seeing this everywhere, in every industry. Is it hitting the funeral world?
Big time. The sources, specifically one report we have, highlight the carbon footprint of traditional funerals. When you think about it, a cemetery is full of buried metal, varnished wood, synthetic fabrics, and concrete vaults.
It's a landfill of expensive materials.
In a way, yes. So we are seeing a rise in green burials. This involves wicker, bamboo, seagrass, and even cardboard caskets.
Cardboard? I feel like there's a stigma there. We buried Grandma in a cardboard box.
There is a massive stigma. But these aren't your Amazon shipping boxes. They are high-quality, heavy-duty honeycomb cardboard. Often they are beautifully painted or covered in a decorative cloth during the service. The idea is that the container should biodegrade along with the body.
So it becomes part of the soil.
Exactly. It's a different philosophy. It seems like there's a trade-off here. The family has to choose between the aesthetic of preservation, that shiny, beautiful metal box, and the philosophy of the cycle of life.
That is the core tension. And we are seeing coffin furniture play a role here too. The study we looked at analyzed the carbon emissions of metal handles versus wooden or rope handles.
I saw that. It seems trivial. A few pounds of metal.
But when you multiply it by millions of funerals, it adds up to a massive carbon cost.
So if I am listening to this and I am thinking, okay, I want to do this right, but I don't want to get ripped off, what do I do? What are my rights? Because I feel like walking into a funeral home is like walking into a casino time, and money seemed to work differently there.
Laughs. It
Yeah.
can certainly feel that way. But you have a shield. It is called the FTC Funeral Rule. This is a federal law in the U.S. designed to protect you.
What is the biggest weapon this rule gives me?
The casket price list, or CPL.
How does that work?
Before a funeral director takes you into the showroom, that room with the soft lighting where the caskets are on display, they must hand you a printed list of every casket they sell and its price.
Why does that matter? Can't I just look at the tags in the room?
You can, but here's the trick. Usually, the showroom only displays a fraction of what they offer. And guess which ones are on the floor?
The expensive ones. The ones with the highest margins.
The mid to high range. They might have a low-cost option, but it might be in an ugly color or tucked in a corner. Or they might not show it at all. The CPL reveals the basic options that might not be on display.
So it prevents showroom shock.
Exactly. You can look at the paper and say, I see you have a basic steel casket for $1,200. I don't see it in this room. I would like to see that, even if it's not under a spotlight.
That is huge. Just ask for the list. It forces transparency.
Ask for the list. It is your right. And here is the second massive right you have. Third-party buying.
We touched on this in the intro. I can buy a casket at Costco.
You can buy a casket at Costco, Walmart, Amazon, or specialized online retailers. And here is the kicker. The funeral home must accept it.
They can't say no outside food or drink.
They cannot. And they cannot charge you a handling fee. They can't say, sure, we'll take that Amazon casket, but it's a $500 unboxing fee. That is illegal.
That seems like a game changer. Why don't more people do it?
Stigma and fear. You are grieving. Do you really want to coordinate a freight delivery truck arriving in the funeral home? People worry it will look cheap or that the funeral director will be mad at them. They worry about the logistics.
Yeah, I can see that.
But the savings can be significant, sometimes 50% less than the funeral home price for the exact same model.
It is worth a Google search at least, just to know the baseline price.
Absolutely. Even if you end up buying from the funeral home for convenience, knowing the online price gives you confidence.
And if we were talking about saving money, we have to talk about the cremation question, because cremation rates are skyrocketing.
They are. I think it's over 50% now in the U.S.
Right. So if I am being cremated, do I need a casket?
If you are having a direct cremation, no service, no viewing, just the cremation, you do not need a casket. You just need an alternative container, which is usually a simple cardboard or pressed wood box. The funeral home has to offer this.
But what if I want a viewing? I want Grandma to look nice for the service, have the open casket so the cousins can say goodbye, but then she's being cremated. I don't want to burn a $3,000 mahogany box. That feels wasteful.
Enter the rental casket.
A rental, it sounds a bit grim, renting a coffin.
It sounds odd, but it is a brilliant invention. It is a high-end, beautiful wooden shell. It looks like a standard, expensive casket. But inside, there is a removable cardboard or simple wood insert. The body rests in the insert.
Okay.
The service happens. Everyone sees the beautiful shell. Then afterwards, the shell is opened. The insert with the body slides out and goes to the crematory. The shell is cleaned and reused.
That is genius. You get the dignity of the presentation without the waste of burning a piece of fine furniture.
Exactly. It is often called a ceremonial casket. It satisfies the emotional need for a viewing and the financial and practical need of cremation.
We have covered so much ground here, from the shapes to the psychology to the laws. As we start to wrap this up, I want to circle back to the emotional side. We have all these options: metal, wood, green, rental. How does a family actually decide?
You know, one of our sources had a quote from a family member after the funeral that it really stuck with me.
What was it?
They said, "I wish I knew it didn't matter as much as I thought."
Wow, it didn't matter as much as I thought.
In the moment, standing in that showroom, the box feels like the most important thing in the world. It feels like the container of your love. But once the service is over, once the earth is closed, the box's job is done. The memory of the service remains, but the material of the casket fades from importance.
There's a powerful perspective. The casket is for the living. It is a focal point for our grief during that specific window of time.
It is. So the advice is, plan ahead. Discuss this before the grief hits. It's an awkward Thanksgiving conversation maybe, but it saves so much heartache later. And when the time comes, focus on what honors the person. Did they love nature? Maybe wicker. Were they a traditionalist? Maybe steel. Were they humble? Maybe the simple pine.
The right choice isn't about the box. It's about what feels right to the family.
That is the bottom line. Don't let status consumption or guilt drive the credit card. Let the person's life drive the decision. And remember, resources like, the funeral program site and the FTC guides are there to be that calm voice when your head is spinning.
This has been incredibly enlightening. I feel like I can walk into a funeral home now and actually understand the language they're speaking.
And that is the goal. Knowledge is the best defense against fear and against overspending.
Absolutely. Well, this deeper look into the world of caskets and coffins has certainly given me a lot to think about, and I hope it has for you too. It's a heavy topic, but one that is so important to shine a light on.
It really is.
Thank you for tuning in. Join us next time.